The millionaire saw a single mom cancel her son's birthday cake. His gentle act touched all. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our new videos. It is quick, free, and the most supportive way to help our channel grow. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Please share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us return to our main character. Ethan Blake had always believed that a person's past did not fade just because time moved forward. Some memories stayed, some wounds remained, and some moments, even years later, returned when life wanted to remind you of who you once were. He had spent his entire adulthood trying to become a man who did not break, a man who did not lose control, a man who could stand firm against any storm. Yet, on a quiet afternoon inside a small bakery on the edge of Willow Creek, he was not the powerful investor the world admired. He was simply a man watching an echo of his own childhood unfold right in front of him. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as Ethan stepped inside, planning only to pick up a cup of coffee before heading to a late meeting. He was dressed in a tailored navy coat, his posture straight, his expression steady as always. But as he waited in line, his attention was drawn to the woman just a few steps ahead of him. Claire Morgan stood at the counter with her 7-year-old son, Jamie, holding her hand. Her hair was slightly messy from rushing between jobs. Her coat was worn thin from too many winters. Yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity that caught Ethan off guard. The cashier smiled at her gently. "Ma'am, the total is $38, the cashier said. Claire froze for just a moment. She reached into her wallet, counted the bills, then counted them again, slower this time. A tight breath escaped her chest. Jamie, standing beside her, looked up with hopeful eyes at the small birthday cake decorated with bright blue frosting and tiny silver stars. "Mom, it is okay," Jamie whispered. "We can get a smaller one." Claire's lips curved into a trembling smile. "I know, sweetheart." She turned back to the cashier, her voice soft. I am sorry. I thought I had the full amount. I am short by $25. Would you mind canceling the order?" Jamie lowered his head, his small hands curling into the sleeves of his coat. Claire placed her hand on his shoulder, trying to reassure him, even though the disappointment in her own eyes was impossible to hide. Ethan felt something inside him shift. The scene hit him with a force he did not expect. The quiet shame, the brave smile, the child trying not to show sadness. He knew that feeling. He had lived that feeling. He had been that child, standing beside a mother who tried her best but never had enough. Claire apologized once more, gently tugged Jamie's hand, and began walking toward the door. Ethan watched them pass, the heartbreak in the boy's eyes too familiar, too close to something he had buried long ago. He turned back to the counter. "Excuse me," he said softly to the cashier. "I would like to purchase the cake they ordered." And the cashier looked at him with surprise. "Of course. Should I call them back?" Ethan shook his head. "No, please keep my name out of it. I just want the cake delivered to them without mentioning who paid." It was meant to be a simple act of kindness, nothing more. But life rarely lets a moment stay simple, especially when it is tied to a wound two souls unknowingly share. As Ethan stepped outside with the cake box carefully sealed, he saw Claire and Jamie standing near the crosswalk. Claire was kneeling, holding Jamie's face gently between her palms, whispering something that looked both soft and painful. Jamie nodded, trying to smile for her sake. Ethan froze. It was the exact image of his mother kneeling down to reassure him on the day she could not afford his birthday cake. The day he never forgot. The day she passed away only weeks later. A quiet ache rose in his chest. He did not know their names. He did not know their story. But something told him their paths were not crossing by accident. And in that moment, without realizing it, Ethan Blake stepped into a chapter of his life he was never prepared for, but one he had been waiting for all along. Ethan Blake returned to his car with the bakery box resting quietly beside him on the passenger seat. He did not drive away immediately. Instead, he sat still, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching Claire and Jamie disappear down the sidewalk. Something in him refused to let the moment end there. He could not explain it, but he felt as if life had placed a thread in his hands, urging him to follow where it led. After a long breath, He started the engine and drove toward the bakery's delivery address system. He gave Claire's name, paid for a same-day courier service, and asked the driver to deliver the cake anonymously. It was the simplest way to help without crossing any boundaries. But as he walked back to his building later that afternoon, the image of Jamie's trembling smile kept resurfacing in his mind, like a memory determined to stay. Inside his office, the city lights began to glow against the late-day sky. His assistant, Melissa, stepped in with a tablet filled with schedules. "Sir, you have that investor meeting at 5, she reminded him. Ethan nodded, but his mind drifted again. "Melissa, can you postpone it for 30 minutes? She blinked, surprised. Ethan Blake never postponed meetings, but she simply answered, "Of course," and left the room. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring at the moving traffic below. He remembered the weight of a ruined birthday. He remembered holding on to disappointment alone. And now he wondered how often Jamie had swallowed his sadness to protect his mother. Meanwhile, across town, Claire and Jamie returned to their small apartment. It was an aging building with peeling paint, but Claire kept the inside spotless. She hung their coats, set her purse on the table, and gently brushed Jamie's hair back. "I am sorry, sweetheart," she said softly. "I will work an extra shift next week. We will celebrate properly then." Jamie shrugged, trying to be brave. "It is okay, Mom. Birthdays are not a big deal." But his voice was too small, and Claire felt her heart twist. She wanted to give him the world, yet every day felt like a climb steeper than the one before. A knock sounded at the door. Claire hesitated. She was not expecting anyone. She opened it slowly, and a delivery driver stood there holding a white box with a blue ribbon. "Package for Claire Morgan," he said. "I did not order anything," she replied, bewildered. "It is already paid for, ma'am." He handed her the box and left. Claire closed the door and set the box on the table. Jamie stared at it with wide, hopeful eyes. When she lifted the lid, her breath caught. It was the exact birthday cake he had wanted, the blue frosting, the silver stars, the delicate handwriting. "Happy birthday, Jamie." Yamia gasped. "Mom, did you buy it?" Claire shook her head slowly. "No, I did not." A wave of confusion washed over her. She glanced out the window instinctively, but the street was empty. No clues, no name, no message. She felt a mix of gratitude and fear. Generosity often came with expectations, and she had learned long ago that the world rarely gave something without wanting something in return. Jamie touched the box with gentle excitement. "Can we eat it, Mom?" Claire nodded, forcing herself to smile. "Of course we can." But even as she lit a small candle for her son, her thoughts drifted back to the bakery. She replayed the moment she refused the kind stranger's help. She remembered the softness in his eyes. She wondered if he had anything to do with this. Across town, Ethan sat through his postponed investor meeting, but the numbers and charts felt strangely muted today. When the meeting ended, Melissa cleared the files, then hesitated. "Sir, you seem distracted. Is everything all right?" Ethan gave a faint smile. "I witnessed something earlier. It reminded me of a time in my life I thought I had left behind." Melissa nodded sympathetically before leaving him alone. As he walked toward the elevator, he could not shake the feeling that his small act had not truly ended the moment. He had seen something in Claire's expression, strength wrapped in exhaustion, and something in Jamie's eyes that felt like a plea for stability. Outside, night had settled over Willow Creek, casting soft, amber light across the streets. Ethan stood for a long time beside his car before finally driving home. He did not know that his anonymous act had already begun unraveling the quiet walls Claire built around her life. And he did not know that fate was already preparing their next collision, one that neither of them could avoid. The morning after Jamie's unexpected birthday celebration, Claire Morgan woke with a familiar heaviness in her chest. She had slept only a few hours. Between washing dishes, finishing a load of laundry, and sitting at the small kitchen table wondering who had sent the cake, her mind never truly rested. She tried to convince herself that it was simply a kind stranger, nothing more. Yet the uncertainty lingered, pressing softly against her thoughts. Jamie prepared his backpack for school, humming quietly as he slipped on his sneakers. His joy from the night before had softened something inside the apartment, bringing warmth to corners that often felt cold. Claire watched him. Grateful for every moment, he smiled. "Mom," Jamie said, adjusting the straps on his backpack, "do you think the person who sent the cake knew it was my birthday?" Claire tried to offer reassurance without revealing her own confusion. "I imagine so, sweetheart. Sometimes people do kind things without wanting any thanks. M. Jamie nodded, his eyes bright with hope. I want to thank them someday. She placed her hand on his cheek. Maybe you will. They left the apartment and walked toward the bus stop. The crisp, morning air felt gentler than usual, as if the world itself recognized Jamie's happiness. When the school bus finally arrived, Jamie waved energetically before climbing aboard. Claire waited until the bus pulled away, then took a slow breath. She had to move on with her day. Bills would not wait. Shifts would not wait. Life never paused long enough for answers. Across town, Ethan Blake stepped into his private gym at 6:30 sharp. Normally, his mornings followed an exact routine: weight training, a 20-minute run, a shower, and then a series of tightly scheduled meetings. But today felt different. Yesterday's encounter had carved its way into his thoughts with a quiet persistence. As he ran on the treadmill, memories surfaced without warning. His mother trying to stretch $20 into a week's worth of groceries. His own canceled birthday cake at age 7. Her apology. His silence because he did not want to make her feel worse. He had spent decades building walls to keep that memory buried, but one glimpse of Claire and her son had cracked those walls open. After his workout, Ethan stepped into his office earlier than usual. Melissa walked in with a folder. Sir, the Colorado project report needs your approval before noon. Ethan took the folder but set it aside for a moment. Melissa, I need a background check. She raised an eyebrow. On whom? A woman named Claire Morgan and her son Jamie. Melissa paused, sensing the weight behind his words. Of course, sir. May I ask why? Ethan sighed quietly. Because I helped someone yesterday, and I want to understand if my help caused any complications. He knew Melissa would interpret it as concern for liability, and that was fine. He was not ready to explain the truth, even to himself. Meanwhile, Claire arrived at Willow Creek Market for her morning shift. She tied her apron, greeted her manager, and began stocking the produce section. Customers passed by with carts full of groceries, some smiling, some distracted. She worked in silence, trying to keep her mind steady. But the image of the cake sitting on her kitchen table continued to return. Around noon, her phone buzzed with a message from Jamie's teacher, asking if she could come to the school. Concern swept through her immediately. She took her break early and hurried across town. When she arrived, she found Jamie sitting alone on a hallway bench, kicking his feet nervously. His teacher, Mrs. Hillman, approached with a calm smile. Thank you for coming, Claire. Jamie is fine. He just had a small fall during recess. No serious injuries, just a scrape. And relief washed through her, almost making her knees weak. She knelt beside Jamie, checking his elbow. Why did you not tell the nurse to call me sooner? Claire asked gently. Jamie shrugged. Because someone already helped me. Claire looked up. Who? Jamie hesitated for only a moment. A man I met yesterday. The man from the bakery. Claire's heart stopped. What do you mean? When did you see him? He was visiting the school, talking to the principal about building repairs. He saw me fall and helped me clean the scrape. He was very kind. Claire felt her breath tighten. Ethan Blake. The same man she had snapped at, the same man she had misread, had found his way into Jamie's day again. She walked Jamie to class, kissed his forehead, then stepped outside into the fresh midday air. Questions swirled through her mind. Why was he here? Why did he care? Why did fate keep placing him in their path? And far across the school courtyard, watching from a distance, without approaching, stood Ethan, hands in his pockets, gaze steady, silently wondering the same thing. Claire Morgan stood outside the school building, her breath unsteady as she watched Ethan Blake from a distance. He remained by the courtyard gate, quiet and composed, as if unsure whether to approach or step back. The autumn wind brushed past her, carrying the faint scent of dry leaves and the laughter of children from inside. Claire crossed her arms, trying to steady her thoughts. She finally gathered enough courage to walk toward him. Why were you here? She asked, keeping her voice calm even though her heart raced. Ethan turned toward her slowly. His expression held no arrogance, no expectation, only sincerity. I scheduled a meeting with the principal this morning. The school has been struggling with building maintenance, and I offered to sponsor the repairs. I did not expect to see your son. Claire absorbed his words, unsure how to respond. Jamie said you helped him after he fell. I was there when it happened, Ethan said. He handled it bravely. There was a softness in his tone that unsettled her. She had grown used to handling everything alone. Kindness felt unfamiliar, even dangerous, because it always came with strings attached. She looked away briefly, searching for steadiness. "You did not have to get involved," she said. "Not with the cake, not with today." Ethan did not deny it. "I know." "Then why?" she whispered. He hesitated, choosing his words with care. "Because I recognized something yesterday. Your son reminded me of myself at his age. And you reminded me of someone who once tried her best to hold everything together." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. But before she could respond, the school bell rang. Ethan took a small step back, giving her space. "I do not want to make you uncomfortable," he added gently. "If my presence causes trouble, I will step away." But Claire shook her head, conflicted. "I just need time to understand what is happening." Ethan nodded respectfully, then left the school grounds without another word. Claire watched him go, unsure whether she felt relief or a strange longing. That afternoon, as she returned to work, she sensed something different at Willow Creek Market. Two customers whispered while glancing in her direction. Another shopper paused near the aisle, pretending to look at cereal boxes while watching her too closely. Claire frowned, confused. Her manager approached her with a worried expression. "Claire, did you see the news?" "What news?" He handed her his phone. On the screen was a trending social media post with thousands of reactions. The headline read, "Self-made millionaire Ethan Blake spotted with single mother at Willow Creek Elementary." Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Photos taken from a distance showed Ethan standing in the courtyard, her approaching him, and Jamie walking beside them. The angle, the timing, the captions, everything twisted the truth into something sensational. Her voice shook. This is not what it looks like." "I know," her manager said gently, "but people online are already talking." Reporters called the store twice asking for statements. Claire's hands trembled as she returned the phone. She had spent years trying to keep her life quiet, safe, unnoticed. Now her private world was being pulled into something she did not understand, something far bigger than her. Across town, Ethan sat in his office, unaware at first of the chaos unfolding. Melissa rushed in, carrying a tablet with multiple alerts flashing across the screen. "Sir, you need to see this. The media has picked up a story about you and a woman at Willow Creek Elementary." Ethan read the headlines, his jaw tightening. "This is irresponsible. It is gaining momentum quickly," Melissa said. "Someone leaked photos. And Victor Hale just posted a vague comment about wealthy men using charity as a publicity tool." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Victor Hale had been his competitor for years, always waiting for a misstep. This story gave him the perfect opportunity to stir trouble. "Prepare a statement," Ethan said firmly, "and find out who took those photos." "Yes, sir." But even as he spoke, Ethan's thoughts drifted to Claire. She had already been carrying too much. He had never intended to add more weight to her life. Meanwhile, Claire stepped outside the market during her break. A car slowed near the entrance. A stranger rolled down the window and snapped a picture before driving off. Another person across the street held up a phone and filmed her. Claire backed up, her heart pounding, the world spinning with noise she could not control. She felt exposed, vulnerable, overwhelmed. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering through a trembling breath, "What is happening to my life?" And somewhere across Willow Creek, Ethan Blake realized the story had already spiraled beyond them, both pulling their lives together in ways neither of them had chosen, but could no longer avoid. Claire Morgan hurried home after her shift ended, her thoughts tangled with fear and disbelief. She pulled her coat tighter around herself as she walked through the cool evening air. Reporters had not arrived at her apartment yet, but she knew it was only a matter of time. The story had grown faster than she could comprehend. She felt powerless, as if the world had taken her small, quiet life and put it under a magnifying glass she never asked for. When she entered the apartment, Jamie was sitting at the kitchen table coloring a picture of a blue cake topped with stars. He looked up with a bright smile. "Mom, look. I drew the cake from last night." Claire tried to smile, but her face felt heavy. She knelt beside him. "It is very beautiful, sweetheart." Jamie tilted his head. "Are you sad?" She wanted to protect him from everything, but she could not lie. "I am a little overwhelmed today. Things happened at work." "Is it because people took pictures of you earlier?" Jamie asked softly. Claire froze. "Who told you that?" "Some kids at school were talking about it." They saw something online. They said a man took photos of you outside the market. Claire closed her eyes, fighting back frustration. Even elementary school children already knew. That realization stung more than she expected. She kissed Jamie's forehead. Do not worry about it. You are safe. That is all that matters. But deep inside, she wondered if safety was something she could still promise. Across town, Ethan Blake stood in his apartment, overlooking the city skyline. The glow of streetlights reflected in the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a calm but somber light over the room. He had been on the phone with his legal team for nearly an hour, discussing the rapidly escalating media situation. When the call ended, Ethan leaned against the table, his expression tight with concern. He had dealt with public scrutiny before. He had faced investors, rivals, and the press without flinching. But this was different. This involved two people who did not have the protection of wealth, influence, or security. Melissa arrived shortly after to deliver updated reports. She noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Sir," she said gently, "the story is continuing to spread. Victor Hale made another post suggesting that your involvement with a single mother is a publicity stunt to distract from the upcoming audit." Ethan's jaw clenched. Victor is exploiting vulnerability for his own gain. This has nothing to do with Claire or her son. Unfortunately, Melissa said, the public does not know that. Ethan nodded, then paced slowly across the room. I need to find a way to protect them. They did not ask for any of this. Melissa hesitated. There is something else. A reporter reached out to Claire's workplace. They want an interview. Ethan stopped walking. She cannot handle that, not alone. Melissa spoke softly. Sir, at some point you may need to contact her. Ethan knew she was right, but the timing and the circumstances felt impossibly delicate. Claire already distrusted him. She believed his presence caused trouble. If he approached her now, it might only frighten or anger her more. Still, he could not remain silent while her world collapsed around her. Meanwhile, Claire checked the locks on her doors twice before trying to settle on the couch. Her phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, neighbors, and unfamiliar numbers. She turned the phone face down, unable to bear looking at it. After a long pause, she opened the laptop she had not used in months. She typed her name into a search bar, and her stomach dropped. Dozens of posts. Photos of her and Ethan in the school courtyard. Comments filled with assumptions, judgment, and speculation. Some called her a gold digger. Others accused Ethan of manipulating her. None of them knew the truth. None of them cared. As she scrolled, one headline stopped her cold. Is Ethan Blake reviving a tragic connection? Sources claim he has ties to the death of Claire Morgan's former fiancé. Claire's heart thudded painfully. Her throat tightened. What is this? She whispered. The article referenced the construction accident from years ago, the accident that took Andrew Collins, the father of her unborn son. Her breath trembled as she read. The piece did not name Ethan directly, but its implications were unmistakable. The project belonged to Blake Industries. The accident had occurred on a site his company partially funded. Claire shut the laptop with shaking hands. Not again, she whispered. I cannot go through this again. She stood up and paced the room, overwhelmed. Her mind raced back to the man she loved, the man she lost, and the grief that nearly broke her. She had spent years building a fragile peace around that memory. Now it felt as if the past was rising from the ground to swallow her whole. Tears blurred her vision. Ethan Blake had walked into her life like a gentle wind. And now, he might be connected to her greatest tragedy. Far across the city, Ethan stared out the window, unaware that the deepest wound of Claire's past had just reopened, linking their lives with a truth he never knew existed. Claire Morgan spent most of the night awake, pacing quietly through her small apartment while Jamie slept in the next room. The accusation she had read online replayed again and again in her mind. The past she had fought so hard to bury now returned with sharp edges, cutting through every fragile piece of peace she had created. She pressed her palms against the countertop, her breath unsteady as memories of Andrew flooded back. She remembered the night the police arrived at her door. She remembered the words, construction accident, and no survivors. She remembered collapsing onto the floor, holding her belly, terrified of raising a child alone. She remembered the loneliness that followed. And now, the possibility that Ethan Blake's company had been involved felt like a betrayal she could not understand, a twist she could not accept. The next morning arrived gray and cold. Claire moved slowly, exhausted, but determined not to let Jamie see her fear. She helped him dress for school, packed his lunch, and walked him to the bus stop. Jamie sensed her quietness, but he did not ask questions. He hugged her tightly before climbing aboard, as if he knew she needed the comfort more than him. Once he was gone, Claire pulled her coat around herself and walked with heavy steps toward Willow Creek Market. She needed the routine. She needed something stable to hold on to. Across town, Ethan Blake sat in his office, reviewing new reports released by his legal team. He read every page twice, searching for answers. The construction accident referenced in the online article was one he barely remembered. It had occurred years ago when he was still expanding Blake Industries. Many projects had been under the supervision of subcontractors. Many had been handled by site managers he had trusted. But the mention of a death tied to one of his company's developments unsettled him. Melissa entered the office quietly. "Sir, I gather the files requested." The accident involved a subcontractor who later filed for bankruptcy. There were allegations of structural negligence, but no direct link to Blake Industries. Ethan closed the folder slowly. No direct link does not mean no responsibility. Melissa softened her tone. "Sir, you were not the one overseeing that project. Legally, you had no involvement. But ethically?" Ethan asked. Melissa hesitated, unsure how to respond. Ethan stood and walked toward the window. The sky was still dark, with early morning light breaking through thin clouds. He felt the weight of a truth he had not known and yet felt accountable for. His voice lowered. "Find out everything, every detail. If someone was hurt because my company failed, I need to know." "Yes, sir," Melissa said before leaving the room. Ethan remained still, staring out at the waking city. Claire Morgan had already suffered enough in her life. He would not be the reason she suffered more. Meanwhile, at the market, Claire restocked shelves while whispers floated behind her back. A pair of customers talked openly near the end of the aisle. "Did you see the article? Apparently she has ties to that old construction tragedy. And he is involved with her now? That seems suspicious." Claire's hands shook as she placed the jar on the shelf. She turned away quickly, trying to breathe. She wanted to explain, to shout that they were wrong, but she had no strength left. Her manager approached her gently. "Claire, maybe you should take the rest of the day off." Claire nodded, unable to speak. She removed her apron, grabbed her purse, and stepped outside. The sun had risen, but the world felt dimmer than before. As she walked down the street, her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made her stop. Ethan Blake. She stared at the name, unsure whether to answer. After a long moment, she pressed the button and held the phone to her ear without saying a word. Ethan's voice arrived, soft and steady. "Claire, I know you saw the article. I know it must have hurt. I want to explain. I want to meet and talk about it." Claire swallowed hard, anger and grief rising. "You should not have any connection to my past," she said. "But somehow you do, and I cannot handle that." "I did not know," Ethan said. "I want to understand what happened. I want to help." You cannot fix this," she whispered. "You do not understand what that accident did to my life." Ethan's voice softened even more. "Then tell me, please. Let me listen." Claire closed her eyes. The wind brushed her hair as she stood frozen on the sidewalk. She could hear sincerity in his voice, but sincerity did not erase years of pain. "I need space," she said finally. "Please do not contact me for now." The line went silent. Ethan did not argue. He did not beg. He simply replied, "I understand." Claire ended the call, her chest tight. She stood alone beneath the morning sky, feeling the distance widen between them. And somewhere across the city, Ethan lowered his phone slowly, realizing for the first time that he might lose her before he ever had the chance to truly know her. Jamie Morgan sensed the change in his home long before he understood the full truth. Claire tried her best to hide her sadness, speaking gently, smiling when she could, and keeping their routine steady. But children notice what adults try to bury. Jamie watched her stare at the phone in silence, watched her hands tremble when she thought he was not looking, and watched the light in her eyes dim day by day. He missed the way she laughed when he told silly jokes. He missed the way she hummed while making breakfast. He missed the softness in her voice that came from hope, not from exhaustion. Jamie had seen that softness appear for a brief moment after meeting Ethan Blake, and now it was gone again. 3 days passed without a single call from Ethan. Claire had asked him not to contact her, and he respected that. She expected him to disappear, the way so many people had before. She believed distance would protect her. But the silence that followed only deepened the ache in her heart, and Jamie felt it too. One afternoon, after school, Jamie stood on the playground as the other children rushed around him. He held his backpack straps tightly, thinking. He remembered the man who had helped him after he fell, the man who spoke softly, listened carefully, and treated him with a kindness he rarely received from strangers. He remembered the man who made his mother smile for the first time in months. Jamie made a decision. When the dismissal bell rang, he told his teacher he needed to go to the front office. From there, he asked the secretary if he could use the phone. She hesitated but agreed when he mentioned he wanted to call a family friend who helped during an injury. Jamie typed in the number he had memorized from hearing his mother whisper it to herself days earlier. The phone rang twice. "Hello?" Ethan answered, sounding surprised. Jamie took a breath. "Mr. Blake, it is me." "Jamie?" Ethan straightened in his chair. "Jamie, is everything all right? Are you hurt?" "No," Jamie said. I need to talk to you." His voice wavered, and that alone made Ethan's heart shift. "I am listening," Ethan said gently. The hallway around Jamie was quiet now. He lowered his voice. "My mom is sad again. She tries to hide it, but I know. She does not sleep much. She looks worried all the time, and I think it is because of the things people are saying about you and about her." Ethan closed his eyes. "Jamie, none of this is your fault. Or your mother's." "I know," Jamie whispered, "but she will not talk to you. She thinks she has to do everything alone. She always thinks that." Ethan could hear the fear in the boy's voice, a fear no child should have to carry. "What do you need me to do?" Ethan asked. There was a brief silence before Jamie answered. "I need you to not give up on her." Those words struck Ethan deeper than any accusation, deeper than any headline or rumor. Jamie continued. "She is strong, but she is tired. And you make her breathe easier. I do not know why, but I saw it. And I want her to feel like that again." Ethan's throat tightened. "Jamie, thank you for telling me." "She is scared," Jamie whispered. "But I am scared too. I do not want us to be alone forever." Ethan felt something inside him shift, something protective, earnest, and undeniably real. This was not about reputation or business anymore. This was about a child's plea and a woman's unspoken pain. "I will not walk away," Ethan said slowly. "Not from you, and not from your mother." Jamie exhaled, relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Blake. I will take care of the rest," Ethan promised. "You go home now. Your mother needs you, and you need her." After hanging up, Ethan sat for a moment, absorbing everything he had heard. The vulnerability in Jamie's voice echoed in the room, pushing aside any hesitation he once had. Claire needed answers. She needed truth. She needed someone who would not leave when things became complicated. Ethan rose from his chair with a newfound determination. He called Melissa immediately. "Find the full accident records," he said. "Every detail, every witness report, every inspection. And find the former subcontractor if he is still reachable. I want the truth before the sun sets." "Yes, sir," Melissa replied. "And prepare the car," Ethan added. "I need to see Claire tonight." Meanwhile, Jamie stepped off the school bus and walked home with a lighter heart. He did not know what would happen next, but he believed something had already changed. Inside her apartment, Claire stood at the sink washing dishes, unaware that her son had already set in motion the one conversation that could alter their lives forever. And across the city, Ethan Blake prepared to face the truth, no matter how deep, painful, or complicated it might be, because a child's courage had given him a reason he could not ignore. Ethan Blake arrived at his office long after sunset, still carrying the weight of Jamie's trembling voice and the urgency behind every word the boy had spoken. He did not bother removing his coat before calling Melissa back into the room. She entered with 2 thick folders in her hands, her expression serious. "I gathered everything you requested," she said. "These are the original reports from the construction accident and the follow-up investigations that were never made public." "To quote," Ethan nodded. "Tell me what we know so far." Melissa opened the first folder. "The accident occurred 7 years ago at a mixed-use development site handled by a subcontractor named Steel Ridge Construction. Their foreman reported structural instability during the early phase, but the company ignored it to stay on schedule." Ethan felt his chest tighten. Was Blake Industries involved in that decision? No, Melissa replied. Blake Industries funded the project, but the subcontractor held full responsibility for site management. The negligence charge belonged to Steel Ridge Construction, not to us. Ethan stared at the reports with a heavy gaze. Legal innocence meant nothing to him at this moment. A life had been lost, a family torn apart, and Claire Morgan had carried that pain alone. Where is the foreman now? Ethan asked. Melissa opened the second folder. His name is Samuel Harris. He left construction after the accident and now works as a private investigator. I contacted him. He agreed to meet tonight. Ethan nodded firmly. Bring him in. Minutes later, Detective Samuel Harris entered the office. His hair had grayed at the temples, and his steady gaze suggested years of experience with stories that never left a person's mind. He took a seat across from Ethan. You wanted the truth, Harris said quietly, and I am ready to give it. Ethan leaned forward. Tell me about Andrew Collins. Harris let out a slow breath. Andrew was one of the most reliable men on that site. He warned us 3 times about compromised support beams. He even tried to fix some issues himself. The subcontractor's owner pushed back, saying repairs would cost too much and slow down the timeline. Ethan's jaw tightened as Harris continued. The day of the accident, Andrew and 2 others were inside checking the framework when the beams gave out. Andrew was the closest to the collapse point. He did not survive. One of his coworkers said he shouted for everyone to run before the structure fell. A silence settled over the room. Ethan felt the weight of each word sink deeper. Your company was not involved in the negligence, Harris added. Blake Industries did not sign those safety approvals. In fact, your site manager filed complaints that the subcontractor ignored, but none of that mattered to the family who lost someone. They never received the full explanation they deserved. Ethan nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and sorrow. Claire Morgan deserves that truth. She deserves more than what she got. Harris studied him for a moment. If you are serious about telling her, be prepared. This is not only about paperwork or blame. This is about a woman who loves someone she expected to grow old with. I know, Ethan said quietly, and I intend to be honest with her. Harris stood, gathered the documents, and placed them carefully on the table. She lost the man she loved, and she raised their son alone. That takes strength. Make sure that whatever you tell her next comes from a place of respect. Ethan nodded again. Thank you. After Harris left, Ethan remained seated, letting the truth settle. It did not absolve him of responsibility in his own mind, but it gave him what he needed most: clarity. Claire had suffered because powerful people chose silence over integrity. He would not make the same choice. He left the office and drove through the quiet, dimly lit streets of Willow Creek. Houses passed by in soft rows, each window glowing with the warmth of ordinary lives. When he finally reached Claire's building, he sat in the car for a moment, gathering himself. Inside her apartment, Claire sat on the edge of her couch, staring blankly at the wall while Jamie slept in the next room. She had spent the last hour trying to calm the fear that had been building inside her since reading the article. The past felt too close again, threatening to swallow every ounce of progress she had made. A soft knock echoed through the hallway. Claire froze. Another knock followed, steady and calm. She approached the door slowly and looked through the peephole. Ethan Blake stood outside, his posture quiet, his eyes carrying something deeper than she had ever seen in him before. For a moment, Claire considered not opening the door, but her trembling hand reached for the handle anyway. And when she opened it, the truth he carried stepped into the light with him. When Claire Morgan opened the door, the hallway light poured gently across Ethan Blake's face. He stood with his coat still on, holding a folder against his side, as if unsure how close he was allowed to come. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world outside felt cold, but the air between them carried something warmer and deeper, shaped by days of fear, confusion, and unspoken truth. Claire swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you here? Ethan met her eyes, steady and sincere. To give you the truth you deserved years ago, and to answer every question you never received answers for. Claire hesitated, but then stepped back slightly. Come in, and Ethan entered the small apartment, noticing the faint glow from Jamie's bedroom nightlight and the quiet stillness that filled the home. He placed the folder on the kitchen table. I spoke with the investigator who handled the accident, he said. His name is Samuel Harris. He was there. He knew your fiancé. and he told me everything. Claire felt her heartbeat quicken. She gripped the back of a chair for support. Tell me. And Ethan opened the folder slowly, revealing reports, witness statements, and documentation that had never been given to her. The collapse was caused by negligence, Ethan said, but not from anyone in my company. Blake Industries funded the project, but we did not manage the site. The subcontractor responsible ignored multiple warnings, including safety reports submitted by your fiancé. Claire's breath caught. Andrew warned them? He did, Ethan said quietly. Detective Harris said Andrew tried to protect everyone there. He saved lives by shouting for others to run. He was brave, Claire, and his warning should have been enough to prevent what happened. A tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. She pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, overwhelmed with a mixture of sorrow, pride, and long-awaited clarity. Ethan continued softly. The subcontractor hid several violations. They covered their mistakes. And because Blake Industries was a major investor, the public assumed blame belonged to us. But legally and factually, the fault rested with the people who ignored Andrew's warnings. Claire sat slowly, her knees no longer strong enough to hold her. Why did no one tell me this? Ethan lowered his gaze. Because people with power often choose silence when the truth is complicated, and because your grief was easier to overlook than the reputation of a company. And there too, Claire wiped her cheek, trying to steady her voice. And why did you choose to tell me now? Ethan looked at her with a softness she had not seen before. Because you and your son were pulled into something you never asked for. Because you were hurting. And because I refused to let silence continue the damage. Claire stared at him for several seconds. You are not responsible for Andrew's death? No, Ethan answered. But that does not mean I do not feel responsible for helping you now. Another tear escaped her eyes, but this time it carried more relief than despair. Ethan stepped closer, pausing a respectful distance away. Claire, I did not come here to ask for forgiveness or to fix what you lost. I came because Jamie asked me not to give up on you, and because you deserve a truth that was withheld from you for years. Claire let out a shaky breath. Jamie talked to you? He did. He was worried about you, and he was brave enough to reach out. For the first time in days, a small, trembling smile touched Claire's lips. He has always had a big heart. Ethan nodded gently. He gets that from his mother. Silence settled between them, soft, healing, full. After a moment, Ethan said, Claire, I will respect whatever you choose. If you want me to walk away, I will. If you want space, I will give it. But if you allow me, I would like to be part of your lives. Not because of guilt, not because of obligation, but because meeting you and Jamie has changed something in me, and I do not want to lose that. Claire looked at him long and deeply. She saw sincerity in his eyes, not the polished confidence of a millionaire, but the earnest sincerity of a man who had known loss and hope alike. I do not want you to walk away, she whispered. Not anymore. The weight between them lifted, replaced by something gentler, something beginning. Ethan stepped closer, his voice warm. Then let us move forward, together. Claire nodded, tears glistening, but her heart finally steady. Together. Just then, Jamie appeared from his room, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Mom? Mr. Blake? Claire and Ethan turned toward him, sharing a soft smile. Ethan knelt to Jamie's height. I kept my promise. Jamie smiled, then wrapped his arms around him without hesitation. And for the first time in years, inside that small apartment in Willow Creek, a family began to form, not through blood, not through history, but through truth, healing, and the quiet courage of choosing each other.